Ek gaan nou nie verder vir Bobby en Gillian bekendstel nie. As jy wil weet hulle agtergrond, dis lieflik op die internet. Ek het gisteraand lekker gelees. Sakeleier, akademikus, gelowiges, lidmate by St. Francis in Parkview. En dis 'n voorreg om hulle vanoggend hier te hê. Ek dink kom ons begin net en sê vir hulle dankie dat hulle vanoggend hier is.
So thank you for sharing a part of your Sunday with us. We've got relatively brief introductory remarks, and we very hope to provoke. Julle is nie mense wat stil bly nie, a response. So we South Africans are being offered the opportunity to reimagine our country and its future. Last year's national elections saw the end of 30 years of one-party dominant politics. There are people in this room who can remember another period of 30 years of one-party dominant politics. Huh? No party last year achieved a majority of votes or seats. And therefore, not because they wanted to, and certainly not because they knew how, they had to share power with other parties. And it seems to me almost certain that in next year's municipal elections, we will have exactly the same situation. No one party, pretty much anywhere, achieving a majority of votes. So this is the first reason why we can reimagine. And then the second reason is that last year, both former President Thabo Mbeki and our current President Cyril Ramaphosa invited the nation to join a citizen-led national dialogue to rethink the future for the next 30 years of our country. Now, I'm of an age where thinking 30 years ahead is challenging, but very fortunately, we have 3 daughters. We have 3 grandchildren. And they are here in Johannesburg. And we hope and pray that they choose to stay here and that they embrace their country and their country embraces them. The idea of a social dialogue is not a new one. The Afrikaans intellectual N.P. van Wyk Louw wrote about this in his weekly columns in Huisgenoot. I hope there are 1 or 2 people in the audience who might even have, this was 1951 to 1953 weekly columns. Listen to his words from 1955. Een van Suid-Afrika se goeie dinge is 'n geelike oop gesprek. Gesprekke waarin jy oor alles kan praat. Waar jy alle moontlike forme van die lewe kan benader. Gesprekke met mense wat ver van jou afstaan in elke opsig. Gelowige teen ongelowige. Communist, he wrote this in 1955, teen liberalist. Nationalist, Calvinist teen katholiek. Elkeen gewillig om sy eie standpunt tot die uiterste te verdedig, maar dan ook gewillig om hoflik en in vriendskap te luister aan die teenstanders se standpunt en te probeer begryp en saaklik op sy veronderstellings in te gaan. That's what a dialogue is. It's the kind of dialogue that President Ramaphosa launched in July of this year when he announced a group of 32 South Africans to help guide the process. the group is called an eminent persons group. I'm a member of it. I'm very uncomfortable with the title eminent. I didn't seek for this role. I got a call from the president to say, would I help do this? It's a very, very interesting group. I have a list, copies of a list, which I'm happy to share with anybody who would like one. But a couple of things to define them. Firstly, there are absolutely no active politicians in this group. There's nobody from government. We are all there as volunteers. We do not get paid. I suppose if there's anything common that you could say about us is that we have all had experience and engagement with South African society in one way or another. In my case, it's business. There are trade unionists. There are sports people, including our rugby captain, Siya Kolisi. There are interesting sports people. Some of you who follow tennis closely will know that we have a wheelchair-based tennis player who has twice won the doubles, this year and last year at Wimbledon. So we have people from arts and culture. We have the director, actor, John Carney, for example. We have academics. We have church-based people. We have no less than 3 archbishops, 1 Anglican. We don't have a DRC archbishop because you don't have a DRC archbishop. Maybe you want to change that. 2 archbishops from the 2 parts of the Zion Christian Church. And, you know, what I want to say about this group is that it's been, since we were appointed on the 11th of July, we've met, I think, 25 times, mainly online, but also in person. We've had very vigorous discussions, but we are united by 2 things. The one is a sense of despair or grief for where our country is, all 32 of us. And if I can pause for that, when we were summoned to the union buildings to be appointed by Cyril Ramaphosa, I want to give you the example of 2 of what my colleagues said. We were all invited to say something. John Carney, the actor, said, "Mr. President, I've spent my entire life going around the world, particularly telling foreigners about all the horrible things that happen in my country in the past and still happen today. Mr. President, can you actually give me some good stories to go around the world and tell people about South Africa?" Another of my colleagues said to the president, "Do you realize how angry the people of South Africa are? If you want a dialogue, you better start with an apology. You need to start with an acknowledgement. You need to explain why you didn't implement the National Development Plan, why you haven't followed up vigorously on the Zondo Commission, why you haven't dealt with the Motlanthe parliamentary review," and she went on. I must tell you that the president responded positively to each one of us, including those 2 comments. So the despair is there, but there's something else as well, and that is that we all believe it can be fixed. That's a shared faith, actually. It's a geloof. So we are charged as the eminent persons group to guide the process. Our powers are not that clear, but we're quite assertive. A launch of the national dialogue took place not that far away in UNISA on the 15th and 16th of August. An ambitious roadmap has been set out, which is going to try to involve millions of South Africans in 50,000 plus small discussions, leading hopefully to agreements in particular areas of our society, and some 38 different aspects of our society have been identified where we can find solutions. So the purpose of the dialogue is to harvest hopes and to find out how to fix things. There are 2 major negative reactions to the idea of the social dialogue, which I want to deal with, and then I'm done. The first is a perception, which is very strong and very powerful, and actually, when it turns out, quite wrong. The first is that from when we went home after voting in 1994, everything has gone to hell. Excuse my language, but I'm actually, I think, in the right place to use this. It's all been downhill. It's all been one terrible decline. Okay. Now, Thabo Mbeki, when he made his speech last year calling for a national dialogue, pointed out that our history of the last 30 years has to be divided into two sections. From 1994 to 2007, here are some words. There are words he's quoting from the CEO of the Institute of Race Relations. And for those of you who know your South African politics, you will know this is not in the ANC camp. So I think the statistics are to be believed. South Africa's first age, from 1994 to 2007, was marked by considerable progress. GDP grew on an average rate per year of 3.6%. The number of people in jobs increased from 8 to 14 million. GDP per capita increased by almost 40%, from 55,000 rands to 76,000 rands per annum, adjusted for inflation. Unemployment went down, and poverty went down during that period. Our Gini coefficient got better. Mbeki goes on to note that during this period, the good days, the halcyon days, 1994 to 2007, we also established some really important institutions. Number one was a new constitution, which we will celebrate next year, 1996, with a Bill of Rights. We didn't have a Bill of Rights. Britain, by the way, doesn't have a Bill of Rights, and we copied Britain. So for the first time, there is a document beyond the reach of Parliament that protects the citizen from the power of the state. Also, the Constitutional Court, which enforces the Bill of Rights. Also, the Independent Electoral Commission, which ensures that our elections are free and fair, and a range of other constitutionally entrenched institutions. Now, the second negative about the social dialogue is the sentiment, and I understand it, and not only do I understand it, I quite often think it, I have to confess, because I'm a very imperfect human being, is that this is nothing more than a talk shop. South Africans talk, they never act. Words are cheap. You never achieve anything through dialogue. That's the sentiment. Here I want to remind you that of a very important counter example. Again, many of you are of an age that can remember the terrifying days and weeks between 1990, after the speech was made, and 1994. And you can remember the level of violence. In fact, a civil war between Zulus and non-Zulus throughout South Africa, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. You can remember how people were buying up baked beans and bottles of water and thinking about safe places in their houses. And you can remember that CODESA 1 broke down. You can remember the televised fight between Mandela and de Klerk. You can remember the assassination of Chris Hani in his house in front of his wife, witnessed by an Afrikaans woman who identified the person who did it and put him in jail. So against that background, between April and September 1993, inspired by Johan Heyns, who, as I understand it, is pretty much the equivalent of an archbishop at the time of the DRC, moderator of the Algemene Synod, he put together a very small group of people who negotiated a thing called the National Peace Accord. It's a 42-page document. You can Google it. It's well worth reading. It's a very detailed charter for peaceful exercise of democratic rights. And from that came a National Peace Accord and National Peace Committees. And maybe you can remember we had a day when we stopped at midday, the entire nation, to actually pray for peace. So I just want to point out that sometimes speaking can make a difference. So the National Social Dialogue is being built as we speak. It's got very ambitious goals. I can't stand here and say they will all be achieved. What I do know is that we as South Africans sit with an invitation from our two presidents to become part of a reimagining of our country. And I would hope that we would take that invitation in good faith. We'd accept the challenge. We would return from the desert and go back into the world, exactly as the Dominee said. I want to conclude with a quote from Mbeki's speech last year, where he quoted from a statement made by Afrikaans leaders last year, and these are the words that I want to leave you with. These Afrikaans leaders said the following: "We want to stay here and to contribute to the well-being of our country and all its people. We are building to remain here. The past should not destroy the future for us all." Thank you.
Mag ek bly sit? Dit is eintlik gemakliker. Die lys van die eminent persons het ek daar gesit, so as iemand daarin belangstel, kan julle kom en net een vat. Bobby, I'm going to sit there rather than here because the light is in my eyes. There we go. There we go. No, this is fine. Bobby het die ontstaan en die aard en die moontlike verloop van die dialoog op nasionale vlak uiteengesit. Ek wil gesels oor ons verpligtinge en ons vermoëns as landsburgers en veral as Christene om die dialoog op voetsoolvlak voort te sit. Ons is Suid-Afrikaners. Ons weet, dit is dikwels verstandig om liewer nie te wag nie. Nie op die kaptein nie, nie op die regering nie. Dit wat vir ons belangrik is, moet ons dadelik self aanpak. Ons is Suid-Afrikaners. Ons groet vreemdelinge op straat en in die winkel. Ons het eintlik reeds tot 'n mate met 'n dialoog begin. Die nasionale dialoog, soos die van julle wat die launch by UNISA gevolg het, gesien het, is soms op hierdie stadium chaoties. Maar ons is Suid-Afrikaners. Ons is vindingryk en veerkragtig en ons kan met 'n mate van chaos saamleef. Ons doen dit dikwels. There are some of us in this room old enough to remember an armored vehicle driving into the Cadessa talk straight through plate glass windows. That was a time of chaos, anger, and fear. But the fruit of all that was our beautiful Constitution. I've just begun reading this book about the Ethiopian quarter that has developed around Jeppe Street in central Johannesburg. Its title is The Chaos Precinct. In Jeppe Street, the turnover in a single mall is more than Sandton City. You just have to look and listen carefully to be able to see it as a profitable and essential hub for the cross-border trade we are forever trying to promote. And because this trade is not happening in the place or the form we expect or recognize, we don't see it, we don't acknowledge it, and perhaps we don't even want it. Maar die belangrikste van alles, wat ons verhouding met die nasionale dialoog betref, is die feit dat ons Christene is. Nou het ek dit te vroeg weggesmyt. En dis half in my kop, maar ook half nie. Die belangrikste van alles, wat ons verhouding met die nasionale dialoog betref, ons is Christene. Ons het die ongemaklike voorreg om te verstaan dat elkeen van ons medemense na die beeld van die Here geskape is. Die nasionale dialoog is dus bloot 'n uitnodiging om na ons medemense en medeburgers te luister, veral te luister na die godsbeelddraande medemense wat ons nie graag wil aanhoor nie. To listen, not stacking up arguments in our heads to refute what they are saying as soon as they have finished talking, but to listen with curiosity, met afwagting, determined to learn something we don't know or something we hadn't heard before. Curiosity, by the way, switches on the prefrontal cortex, and hope does this too. Our brains and our hearts were made for this kind of listening. We are wired for connection and community. Ons is daarvoor geskape en daartoe gemaan deur ons geloof. One way to describe Christians working together for good is building the kingdom. But I like theologian Walter Brueggemann's word for it, shalom. Brueggemann tells us that our goal as Christians is shalom, not just for ourselves, not just for our in-group, but for everyone. That we are required to work within difficult and sometimes terrible circumstances towards a fruitful harmony for the entire universe. Brueggemann describes shalom as all of creation being one, every creature in community with every other, living in harmony and security toward the joy and well-being of every other creature. Brueggemann refers us to Jeremiah's letter to the exiles in Babylon, where they were told that their well-being was tied to the well-being of the hated metropolis, which they feared and resented. God's shalom is known only by those in inclusive, caring community, including the very ones we prefer to exclude. Depending on how deep the hatred and how great the fear, this promise of shalom with the hated Babylon is a really challenging and invigorating invitation, or a terrifying, paralyzing, and unacceptable idea. The vision of shalom, says Brueggemann, lets us look forward to the lepers and the Pharisees, all together, the sons of Isaac and the heirs of Hagar, each attending to the flourishing of the other. And how does this wonderful vision begin? With dialogue, and especially with listening. So now it's time for us to listen to one another.
Was serious. So if anybody has a remark or a question, we are here to listen to one another. Yeah, so please, anybody. I will come to you with this portable microphone so that everybody can hear, or I'll try and repeat what you say. Anybody, a remark? Judy. Yeah, it's a bit late now to ask for a recording, but I know. Oh, thank you for that. Wonderful. Anybody? Philip.
Wat sal gebeur as Ramaphosa verwyder word van sy pos?
So for everybody just, the question is if Ramaphosa is no longer president, what will happen then?
I mean, here's what might strike you as a cheeky answer, but it's my deep belief and my lived experience in South Africa. You know what? I don't know. I hope he sticks around. His term of office as president of the country is to 2029. As president of the ANC to 2027. I hope he stays around, let me say. But you know what? If he goes, we're going to survive. That's the cheeky answer. But it's an important answer because if I look back at the list of South African leaders, going right back to Louis Botha in 1910, they've all had their strengths and their weaknesses, and they've all come and gone. And the nation has survived. So the process will survive.
Can I just add briefly? We have in our extensive collection of books a book titled portentously When Smuts Goes. And here we still are.
You and then Wim.
Just a question. Who is listening to this eminent group? I get the impression it's this Ramaphosa, but all his lieutenants on the right and left don't want to listen to what you people are going to tell him, or what the people in South Africa are concerned about.
As politicians are tended to say, it's a good question, but I'm not only just going to say it's a good question, it's actually the right question. We don't even know, as the Eminent Persons Group, how carefully Mr. Ramaphosa is listening. Mr. Ramaphosa is listening to us. Actually, we advised him to delay the convention, and he didn't listen to us. And part of the chaos of the 15th and 16th of August, I'll get fired, by the way, for the recording, but don't worry about that, is that he didn't listen to us, even though he publicly claimed to have listened to us. So we can't command him. We have no voter base. We have no power. We are the sheep coming back from the desert with the wolves. We are working very hard as an Eminent Persons Group to try to make sure that all parts of civil society, because some foundations withdrew at the last moment before, particularly the Mbeki Foundation, we're trying, and I think we will, get them back into the process. We're talking to all the political parties, including MKP and the EFF, and trying to get them engaged in the dialogue. So we will do everything that we can to make this as inclusive as possible. But in a way, the most important thing is that we would hope that a significant part of the 62 million South Africans would actually reimagine their country and assert. I can tell you one of the criticisms that my fellow EPG members had of the initial convention was twofold, things that interested me. Firstly, and this was mainly, by the way, elderly saying this in the group, black women and many of them with an ANC background, commented about the convention. They said there are too many young people there. And they said, where are the whites? And particularly, where are the Afrikaners? Okay. Now, this expresses the desire to actually bring everybody into the tent. And that's our job, but it's frankly also your job. Because if you the tent doors, I think, will be open. But whether you walk in or not is entirely a choice that you make.
Maar ek dink ek gaan hard genoeg kan praat.
maar praat maar.
Dis miskien 'n moeilike saakie om aan te roer. Ek dink persoonlik wat is my probleem met hierdie hele dialoog dat ons het nie ingekoop in wat daar moet gebeur nie. Ons weet nie wat is die groot opdrag van hierdie dialoog nie. Wat wil ons bereik met hierdie dialoog? En omdat ons nie ingekoop het nie, is daar natuurlik so 'n stukkie van agterdog. En ek dink daar moes sterker leiding gewees het van die president om te sê, julle mense wat ek nou gekies het 'n taak. En dit is wat julle moet bereik. En ons as gewone mense in Suid-Afrika weet nie wat dit is wat hierdie groep moet doen nie. Ons stem saam, daar moet gepraat word. Ons stem saam, daar moet 'n oplossing kom. Maar ons is primêr hier vandag in hierdie kerk omdat ons saam iets glo. En ons moet in daardie samesprekinge moet ons glo sodat ons nie so krities staan elke oomblik as daar iets gereël word om te sê dis nou maar weer die politici wat met mekaar gaan praat en die besigheid en al daai goed, dit raak ons nie eintlik nie. So ek wil net die standpunt maak. Ek dink daar was te min kom ons sê verwagting geskep in wat moet nou gebeur. Nou moet hierdie groep mense wat 'n wonderlike groep mense is, lyk myself besluit wat wil hulle nou eintlik daar doen. Maar wat is die missie? Wat is die doel uiteindelik van al die gesels? Baie dankie.
Dankie.
Okay. You're 100% correct. It could not have been announced in a more inept way. It could not have been launched in a more inept way. And it's not clear where it's going. The one observation I want to make is a personal one, which it's always a dangerous thing, but there are moments in my life when one of my 3 daughters says, "Dad, I'd like to come and talk to you." And I then go into, I'm paralyzed with fear until the moment arrives when the conversation begins. Because I do not know what my daughter wants to, is she going to immigrate? Is she going to divorce? What is going on? And as a parent, I fear the very worst. But it would be a tragedy if I refused to talk, or rather to refuse to listen to her, to find out what it is. And the only other thing I would say is I would hope that every faith-based community, and when I say community, I start with this one, Andiber, okay? That you would spend some time as we head towards Christmas and then Easter, thinking about what is your hope for the next 30 years of South Africa? What's broken? What needs to be fixed? If you do that, I would give you a personal guarantee that I will get somebody in this national structure to take note of it. I can't promise that they'll do what you want them to do. I can't even promise that they'll do anything, actually. Because actually, the national politics, not only in South Africa, is pretty unreliable, pretty not dependable. Yeah.
Ek sien ons het net so 10, miskien 9 minute oor. Ek wil nie hê dominee moet in die moeilikheid kom met die kerkraad nie. En ek wil dus 'n paar vrae aan hierdie gemeente stel. Ons is so geneig, ons kan maklik, as ek nou sit en sê, wat is verkeerd in hierdie land, sal ek 10-talle antwoorde kry. Maar ek wil vir julle vra, nie noodwendig nou nie, miskien gaan julle huis toe en julle dink hieroor na, wat is reg met die land? I want to ask you to reimagine the country. I want to ask you to remember the hopes you had. We all had hopes when we stood in those queues in 1994. And then I want to ask you to sit for a while with the good stuff. Because this is where our neurology lets us down. ek hoop nie Ansie gaan my nou regstel nie. Our brains are Teflon for good news and Velcro for bad news. We need to sit with the good news for that very long period of time of 20 seconds, and we don't do it. So, reimagine, discuss with one another hope instead of potholes. Think about what it would take for you to fall in love with your country again. Ek dink daar's nog 'n paar
Sure.
vrae.
I mean, I'm tempted to ask you to come and preach. I mean, I'm captivated. Maybe it's just me, but the power of reimagination, the power of words, the fact that Gillian quoted Walter Brueggemann, I've been trying to do that for weeks to no avail. She has succeeded. She's pinned it down. Anyway, maybe, yeah, thank you. One more question here. I'm going to cap it on Sarah and Yolandi, and then we need to wrap it up. Sarah, mag ek net vra dat ons kort asseblief. Doe maar, ek sal vas.
Okay, let me say from my point of view, I think maybe we expected too much of Ramaphosa when he was elected after Zuma. And I'm so sorry to say that I'm very disappointed because as a leader, he's not very decisive with things that happens where he should take a stand, which we all will appreciate. There's such deliberate procrastination the way he acts. And I feel that can solve a lot of problems and give us peace of mind because we all want things to work. We all want peace, we all, and as you say, to talk about things, that's the solution, which we all long for. Thank you.
Why don't we take the second question and then we could...
Say again? Let's take both.
And we'll make concluding comments.
Yolandi, sorry, this is on YouTube. It has to... Sorry.
Well, okay. I just want to ask something or saying something. I'm a very positive person, and I was one of the people that were believed that everything will change in 1994.
Yeah.
But the first time I ever had to fill in a form in to say black, white, after that, I was so disappointed. That shouldn't be matter anywhere, any place, but that's even now worse. And when Ramaphosa wants to change the country, he must start working, him and his party start working for the country, not for a party. That's the main problem. As soon as you are in control of a country, even though which party you are, you have to be positive for the country. But I'm sorry, they just want to let their party survive. And the rest of us, the people I'm working with, people from different cultures, are sad as I am.
In Ireland, they are still celebrating battles that were fought 300 years ago. It's not quick to heal wounds, to turn a country around. It's not something we can do in 30 years. I had the privilege of attending a preaching course run by an Irish poet called Pádraig Ó Tuama, and he had worked in peace in Ireland, and somebody said to him, well, it's still an awful mess, isn't it? And he got furious. He said, it's only been 300 years. A lot of, and that's why I'm hoping I can still persuade Bobby to say something, we overlook a lot of the things that have been done. There are, we criticize the grants. We say they, oh, what a red flag they is. As soon as we say they or those people, we need to stop, stand back, and wonder, who are we talking about? Who is the I and who is the they? And what should I be doing to bridge this gulf? But we say they just have babies on grants. But why are the grants there? Because white people and colored people and Indian people were getting grants, And the decision to be made in 1994 was, shall we take them away from everybody, or shall we extend them to everybody? And there are people who are able to make ends meet. I have been very involved in education, and I have a challenge for you. Go onto the website of the Department of Basic Education and look at the latest matric paper, and I guarantee you it is a lot harder than anything any of us sitting here now ever wrote. When I did matric, there were 15 different matrics in the country. There were 4 provinces, and Natal, he wrote Natal matric, and they were sure theirs was the best. People from the Cape thought Cape matric was the best. I wrote a Transvaal matric. Actually, nobody thought the Transvaal matric was the best. But it was all rote learning. We had a history textbook, for example, and that was what we wrote down. Schools that really cared about their marks made people write the essays beforehand. Now, you get material, and one of the questions quite a long time ago when one of our daughters wrote was on Pearl Harbor. It was only 6 points. That meant you couldn't spend more than 5 minutes on it. They gave them material to prove that actually the Americans knew the attack was coming and they didn't do anything because they wanted to go in the war, and material to prove that they had a really rotten spy service and they didn't know, and it was a big surprise. And the matriculant had to read the material, make a choice, and make an argument as to which was right. We never had anything like that. The standard of maths has gone up. It's fabulous that there's maths literacy because every child has to do some level of maths. When we wrote matric, some people did typing with a little handkerchief tied over the typewriter keys so that they couldn't look at the keys while they typed down whatever. There is so much that has got better. So my challenge is just in education to go onto that website. You never used to be able to find vraestelle on the website, but they are there, and explanations, and do a little bit of research before you decide that everything has got worse, because it hasn't. And I taught at a university. One of our daughters is still a teacher at a university, and she is filled with hope because they are producing good teachers. Okay, enough. Do you want to? We're done.
Is there one more, Gerard? I want to get you on YouTube too, please. Not with this bag. This is for now.
Bobby, yeah, I'm extremely curious to hear the product that comes out of this national group and the dialogue. Of course, there's a lot of positive things in the country that we can build on. If you look at countries like Singapore, a lot of countries in the last 100 years that had to make new, they had to build again, make a new beginning. I mean, Singapore, they decided that the one big thing is forget the past. We're all equal and we're going to grow together. Is there something that we can take away that everybody agrees about that can give us wings?
Well, just very briefly, I'm just emphatically agreeing with what you're saying. What we have to do is to escape from the prison of seeing everything through a racial filter. We really do. And we have to start. I mean, we can say, when are they going to get over it, apartheid? I mean, I'll tell you a lovely story from the Eminent Persons Group. I can actually name him. John Carney is at a shopping mall with his granddaughter. He's walking past a Wimpy. He says to his granddaughter, do you know when I was young, I couldn't go and eat there? His granddaughter said, why would you want to? Their food is terrible. So, escape the prism. Actually, our daughters who are in their 30s, one just turned 40, race is not a big issue. Gender is a big issue. And finding a way of putting food on the table in a sustainable way, so jobs. I mean, we joined She joined the NIPR, I joined Anglo-American. We just got into an escalator unless you did something terrible, you had a job for life. And a pension, and a proper pension, defined benefit. And a medical aid. And a company car. And all of that, that's gone for everybody, not just South Africans. So getting rid of the world, there's a youth revolt taking place as we speak, in Nepal, of all places. Also in Morocco, okay? And these are young people for whom the promise of prosperity, employment, and progress has not been kept. They don't think much of democracy. They have to reimagine a future in which there's a place for them. So as we think about some global challenges, I think we will help to take the kind of race and guilt and anger scales off our heads, I hope.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you to everybody also who contributed. Ek is baie in die versoeking nou, want julle weet ek is 'n misbruiker van mikrofone. Ek is baie in die versoeking om te sê, en ek dink ons moet bietjie eerliker met mekaar wees. In 94, Gillian, I did not have hope. I was imbued with fear for everything that we were about to lose. That was my reality. I wonder if I'm the only one who was filled with fear and uncertainty. Daai analogie van die Teflon en die Velcro, dit is powerful. Ons is nog steeds gek oor slegte nuus en negativiteit. En ons is stadig om goeie nuus en positiewe verandering raak te sien. Kom ek sê ek is. Dis 'n klad op my naam. Miskien is ek die enigste een in die vertrek wat so gevoel het. My pa het vir my gesê in 95, 96, my kind, gaan oor see. Hier's nie 'n toekoms vir jou in ons land nie. En deur die genade van die Here het ek en Karina 4 kinders wat op hierdie stadium, en dit is nie kritiek teen enigiemand anders nie. Ons 4 kinders sê, ons wil graag in Suid-Afrika wees en bly. As dit verander dit, so be it. Anyway, kom ons sê vir hulle 2 baie, baie dankie. In case you don't know, this bag is by Porchi. He's an Afrikaans kunstenaar there from Stellenbosch. And Ansi so kindly got this together. This is a small gift from us, Gillian, and Bobby, to say thank you. And yeah, may the conversation continue.
Thank you very
God
much.
bless.
Thank
God
you.
bless. Thank you. Thank you.